Hey, church family, this is Noah. I'm excited today to share with you and do our pastor's devotional. I'm in Proverbs chapter 9. I want to just look at a couple of verses in Proverbs 16 or Proverbs 9, 16 through 18. But before we get to that point, I really wanted to share with you what is this chapter about. Well, in this chapter, what we see is wisdom and folly being personified as these two women who are throwing these parties. And so we at first meet Lady Wisdom. And Lady Wisdom has this magnificent house. She's calling people into this house, saying, please come and partake in this wisdom. For all of you who lack understanding, turn in here. I will give you wisdom. And when they enter this house to receive wisdom, what they are greeted with is these beautiful pillars that hold up the house. She has slaughtered an animal and there is meat provided. Sometimes in our modern eyes, we can read over that and miss the significance of it. Back then, meat was a delicacy. They did not have meat at every meal like we do today. And so this was a big deal for someone to come in and there's meat that's readily available. She has spared no expense in this party. To further that, she has mixed wine with spices. It's not this cheap watered down wine. It's flavorful. It's exciting. There's maidens in her house that are going to and fro, going about, and making sure that the party's going well. And so it's really saying that when you come in to receive wisdom in this house, what you are doing is you're going to be blessed by the goodness of God. You're going to find peace. You're going to find joy. You're going to find fulfillment. There is blessing that comes from partaking in godly wisdom. But then on the flip side of that, we meet Lady Folly. And Lady Folly is giving almost the exact opposite, throwing the almost exact opposite party. If you look in verse 16, it says, whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And as for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of hell. So what we see here is, and I find it interesting, is that in verse 16, that Lady Folly is calling people in to her party, and she says, whoever's simple, let him turn in here. Well, if you look in verse 4, that's the exact same phrase, exact word for word, exactly what Lady Wisdom says. And so Lady Folly is really trying to make her foolishness and her party look appealing. And it's the same for us when we want to live in our way, live in our sin, do the things that we want to do. What happens is it's an enticing call. It makes us think that, it's a good idea. I should go ahead and go and do this. And so for the people who want to live in their own way and want to be foolish and want to live in their sin, they go into Lady Folly's house, and what is there? It's stolen water and stolen bread. And this is supposed to show us that when we live in our sin, when we do the things that we want to do and not live in the wisdom of God, not live in the way that God has designed us to live, what happens is that we partake in these things and they just end up destroying ourselves. If I was to just drink water and eat bread for the rest of my life, my health would not be very good. I wouldn't be nourished. And the writer of Proverbs here is trying to say the same thing. When we live in a way that is not the way that God's designed us to live, in the wisdom of God, putting Him first, what we do is we partake in our sin, and we're malnourished. We're not helping ourselves out in any possible way. And then this is by far the worst part. In verse 18, it says that the guests that are there, that this is not actually a party at all. This is a funeral. It says that her guests are in the depths of hell. These are people who have lived in their own way. They've rejected God their entire lives. They've rejected living in godly wisdom their entire lives. And because of that, they are now eternally separated from God. And so as I was reading this, I was reminded in Proverbs 4, just a few Proverbs earlier, in Proverbs 4:23, and I mentioned this on Sunday as well. It says, guard your heart above all things, for out of it spring the issues of life. And so if we are not consciously guarding our hearts, we are going to live in a way that is absolutely wicked and vile and evil. We're going to live in the way that we think is good, which we know is really not good. It's really going to lead us down a path of destruction. But when we live in the way that God has designed us to live, in His world, for His glory, in the way He's designed us to live, what we see is absolutely just wonderful blessings that come from that. And that doesn't mean that your life is going to get better, that you're going to get all these riches, that you're going to get all this power. I'm not saying that at all, and that's not what this is saying either. But it's saying that we will, when we live in the way that God's designed us, we will live and see the goodness of God. We will have peace. We will have joy. We will have fulfillment. We will be able to live out our lives and see godly fruit living in our lives because we're bringing God glory in the actions that we do. And that's all a result of going back to Proverbs 4. We have to guard our hearts, or else we're just going to give in to sin and we're just going to fall apart. Thank you so much for letting me share this with you, and I hope to see you on Sunday.